Hi, everyone. This is Christina Barr, and you're watching Black Tea News. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr. I already got like little hearts in and I just started. You guys are great. Today, we're going to be talking about the Rittenhouse case. I wonder by the time I even get to finish this broadcast if the jury will perhaps be done with their deliberation. But they're talking about it. Some people are like, why is it taking so long even now? Because it's more than a few hours now. And it's a pretty clear-cut case of self-defense. And the prosecution clearly did not have a case since it became a case about the Second Amendment, the case of whether there was provocation and just things that didn't make sense. It seemed pretty clear, even when they dismissed the gun charges, that the state was aware that they didn't have a case, but they were going to try to prove it anyway. So another pretty interesting development that happened really late in the case, the state tried to they did put in some evidence of an enlarged, enhanced, blurry photo, and they tried to make it seem like Kyle had pointed his gun at someone, and then the defense ended up shooting it down. Like, that doesn't even make sense how the picture is, because it's like it would have been the opposite of how Kyle actually holds his gun. And so they debunked it, but the judge ended up saying yesterday that he thinks he probably made a mistake admitting that into the case. And he said, if the science is bad on it, then like it's really easy to get a mistrial. It's really easy to get a mistrial if that's the case. And so turns out that the technology that they used, it says like a disclaimer that you should not use it for evidence. We just live in a crazy world right now. It's just a crazy world. So I want to talk about a little bit of the case. I want to remind people just how crazy it was a year ago when all this went down with the riots. I have a couple of clips that I want to show you guys in case you need a refresher. I want to talk about the media, their bias. I want to talk about President Biden. I want to talk about this crazy race narrative. There's people who are saying, oh, what if Kyle was black? Which that's a crazy, why I don't understand why people, no, I take it back. I got to stop saying that. I do understand why they want to inject race. It's just really, really dishonest. And it's really terrible for the sake of our country that they want to keep injecting race into things that have nothing to do with race, because they feel, because it's clearly political. And they feel that the best way to win arguments, just in general, whether it's something like this, whether it's Trump or whether it's an argument with me or whether it's someone like Winsome Sears or someone, they have to inject race. So even though you may be talking to a black conservative or someone like Winsome Sears, you have to say, well, they're a white supremacist, because that's how they think you win a political argument, is that you have to bring up race and you have to get all the other minorities riled up, and then you got to make all the I don't know, easily gullible white people feel bad, and we got to take the side of the people who are calling the other people racist because we don't want to look bad ourselves. So that's been the state of our politics for a long time. That was definitely the strategy that they used to get Trump out of office. Trump became like the person who took like America's racial sins upon his shoulders. And Joe Biden said, hey, if we have to defeat racism in America. He said, we're fighting for the soul of the nation. He said, we're fighting for the soul of the nation. And somehow electing this white racist was how we were going to save America. Oh my gosh. So that's what they sold. So they really used every single racial thing that they could to make their case. And Rittenhouse ended up being a casualty of their narrative that they kept pushing. So we're going to talk about that a bit, but I really want to talk about this piece that David French wrote today. He put out, some other conservatives are giving a hard time. David French, I don't know what Trump did to this man to break this man. Trump had entirely too much power. Like, I get it, he was a president of the United States, but too many people made him their sun, their moon, and their stars. And it seems like French can't think straight. And just because he sees some Trump supporters who are sticking up for Kyle Rittenhouse, and yes, there's some people calling him a hero. Um, I don't know if I want to go that far, but I can't say that the actions he didn't take as far as trying to do good for some people weren't heroic actions. Did everything that he do, was it the wisest thing? You can debate that, but when people say he did something wrong, you're making the case that he did something immoral. He didn't do anything illegal. He was there, literally, there's literally video evidence and stuff that he was there to help people. So David French coming at him, and people trying to make this case that you're provocative if you exercise your Second Amendment rights, like you're asking for trouble just for the purpose if you have a gun, um, which is totally ridiculous. And the prosecution made some really, really spectacular, ridiculous things. I posted a video or two about it on my social media. We're gonna go through some of them. We just live in a bonkers world. And I don't know how many people are aware of the fact that the people that what are the odds that like all the people who like he shot were like career criminals. One of them was an actual child rapist. One of them was a domestic abuser. And they did identify the black guy who was kicking Kyle. He's been identified. I don't know his name, but apparently it seems like this, from what I'm reading on the sources, that the state is aware of this person. I wonder if the defense know, if they disclose that to the defense. But the man who was kicking him, guess what? Shocker, surprise, also a career criminal. So what does it say? What are the odds that everyone who was trying to kill Kyle or attack him that night? And I believe that he could have potentially been killed, because there were other people who tried to save their businesses and people attacked them and they were really, really hurt. So there's there's no reason to assume that something really bad couldn't have happened to Kyle if he wasn't armed and was simply just trying to put out fires that people were starting. That his life wouldn't have been at risk. So we're just gonna try to just run through it all. Thank you for joining me today. Before I hop, I know I've already kind of started reeling up, but I do want to encourage you guys to go to blacktnews.com, check out different content that I have on the website. Please check out the store that I have. Check out some of the merchandise, like the goat hoodie, super comfortable. I got it different colors. I got the Denounce White Supremacy, Defeat Joe Biden shirt with a list of his evil racist history on the back, so you can be prepared and trigger the folks on the left. And also we got pro-Trump stuff, got I'm not the victim you're looking for shirts. I got stuff with black tea and just a bunch of other stuff. I like the You Are Not That Special, My Money, My Business shirts. And I do have these seasonal pumpkin spice season mugs that you can check out. So go ahead and go to the website and check out the different stuff that we have. If you want to support blacktnews.com, you can also go to blacktnews.com/donate and leave a gift. Anything that you guys are willing to do, I appreciate it. But make sure you're following me on all my socials. I'm on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. All those are at Black Tea News, and the only one that is different is Twitter, and that is at True Black Tea. So before I jump into like the videos and so on, you guys know I like to start with something humorous, and it's not really humorous. It's kind of on the darker side just because it's so dead on with reality. But George Alexopoulos, when he does a comic I usually like to show it. So you have the judge. He's like, "Oh, the jury's reached a verdict," and he's like, "We have, Your Honor. Can't you tell?" And you see all the writing going on. Someone's armed with a skateboard. Someone's has an axe. It looks like, and stabbing is going on. And the National Guard, who's just called National Guys here, is just standing around. There's fire. And they're like, "If you think this is bad, last year there was a kid who tried to do our jobs for us." So if you don't know who George Alexopoulos is, he does some great political comics. We got a book he did on Joe Biden where he was like a children's horror fantasy, well, like an adult horror story, but kind of written in the kids' way, but really it was for adults. That was a really interesting book. But he has a lot of cool art. So his socials there at the bottom at gprime85. You can follow him. But not too funny because obviously it hits a little too close to home. It hits a little too close to home. So I do want to start off by just reminding everyone that there was a narrative built here for some time. And it was for political purposes. the George Floyd case, which, by the way, I don't know how closely you watched that trial, but the prosecution didn't bring up that there was some kind of hate crime that happened because they did not have evidence. So the whole world just kind of stopped for this case, and there wasn't any sort of evidence for that it happened on the premise of race. And you could say, well, that wouldn't have happened to a white person. Absolutely not true. There was a white gentleman, his name escapes me, but cops had him. He was like suffocating in some hay. I think it was like a barrel of hay maybe he was on. And they were kind of laughing, like the cops and stuff. It was just really, really gross. But for anyone to say, hey, this wouldn't have happened to a white person, it's just demonstrably false. There's circumstances where that's different. And also, we could get into all of the things that happened with the George Floyd case, but that would take me down a whole different track. But this was like the jumping point to focus everything on race, to really hit home that America is systemically racist. America is evil. We need to root out this evil. And Trump is like the root cause of it. Like, he's the face of it. His supporters are the face of it. And these people need to be shot down, and not literally, but figuratively, like at the election box, at the polls and so on. And Joe Biden, he launched his campaign on the Charlottesville hoax with saying that Trump called these people white supremacists. He kept pushing that. He's been confronted by journalists saying, why are you pushing this lie? But he kept pushing it. He kept saying it time and time again, saying that robotic, like they had these pitchforks, or they had the torches, and you could see in their eyes. And he says like the same thing over and over and over again in regard to it. He's just a puppet or a machine or parrot or whatever, with the same talking point over and over and over again. So that's how he launched his campaign. He actually had an ad that had Kyle Rittenhouse's image in it when he was talking about white supremacists. So he slandered him pretty bad. But here's a clip of Biden back when he was a candidate talking about Rittenhouse.
Well, look, I don't know enough to know whether that 17-year-old kid exactly what he did, but allegedly he's part of a militia coming out of the state of Illinois. Have you ever heard this president say one negative thing about white supremacists? Have you ever heard it? That's the reason I got back in this race, because what happened in Charlottesville. People coming out of the woods carrying torches, their veins bulging.
Their veins bulging. That was the line that he just keeps saying all the time. When have I heard Trump denounce white supremacy? When he was talking about Charlottesville. That's the hoax. He literally said in the speech where everyone's like, oh my gosh, the very fine people. He literally says, I'm not talking about neo-Nazis. I condemn them totally, period. So to pretend that Trump has never condemned white supremacists, he's done it a lot. And so Kyle Rittenhouse was not tied to that militia group. He's not a white supremacist. And so it was irresponsible for him to say that there. And it was definitely irresponsible and hopefully criminal, and he gets sued for using Kyle's image in that ad where he alleged that he was a white supremacist. So his mother has kind of hinted anger and perhaps that they're going to sue the pants off of a lot of people. And I think maybe that's why media also thinks there's a lot at stake at protecting their narrative as well. Well, they're just devoted to it. They just have a particular ideology now at this point. But also, Nicholas Sandmann got a lot of money for, them defaming him, and all he did was stand and there was a guy dancing around. They labeled Kyle as a white supremacist and a bunch of other things. I played this yesterday, but I guess I'll play this supercut again.
Kenosha shooter, Kyle Rittenhouse, he murdered 2 people, by the way.
Rittenhouse is basically what you would have had in a school shooter. He's a 17-year-old kid. He shouldn't have had a gun. He crossed state lines to supposedly protect property. No, he was going out to shoot people.
Kyle Rittenhouse, the 17-year-old vigilante.
Kyle Rittenhouse, a vigilante.
Kyle Rittenhouse, the armed teenage vigilante.
A 17-year-old vigilante, arguably a domestic terrorist, picked up a rifle, drove to a different state to shoot people.
Kyle Rittenhouse, a guy who's deeply racist, went with weapons to a Black Lives Matter protest looking to get in trouble. He did. He murdered a couple of people.
Rittenhouse, the 17-year-old kid, just running around, shooting and killing protesters.
You see the 17-year-old who was radicalized by Trumpism, took his AR-15 to Kenosha and became a killer.
A white, Trump-supporting, MAGA-loving, Blue Lives Matter social media partisan, 17 years old, picks up a gun, drives from one state to another with the intent to shoot people.
A 17-year-old boy who drove across state lines with an AR-15 and started shooting people up, including a guy with a skateboard.
Kyle Rittenhouse, who has killed protesters, unarmed protesters.
Rittenhouse, a 17-year-old that went with a weapon into the middle of protests and then provoked people and then shot and killed them.
Kyle Rittenhouse is the enemy.
A boy from out of state drives up to the state with an AR-15 around his neck, shoots and kills a couple of people, shooting wildly, running around, acting like rent-a-cop.
Drove across state lines armed with a rifle to go and shoot people.
What a dark, dystopian scene where a 17-year-old boy is carrying around a rifle.
So that's a little bit, that went further on, but I hope they sue the pants off a lot of these people. Like I said yesterday that Joe Scarborough, he was a registered Republican not too long ago. Trump broke him too. So, but even though it's MSNBC and you expect just bad thinking on that network, just in general, it's still disappointing to see people lie the way that they lied. I mean, of course, Kyle did not, he lawfully had his weapon that never crossed state lines. It's not a crime to cross state lines. Oh my gosh. I mean, if you live in Michigan like I do and you decide to go to Ohio, it's not a crime. It's not a crime. And he lived very close. He was like on the border. If even 30 minutes maybe to get to Kenosha. His dad lives in Kenosha. He has family that lives in Kenosha. He had friends that lived in Kenosha. He worked in Kenosha. He did as a lifeguard. He did work in Illinois as a lifeguard, but he was furloughed. So then he was working in Kenosha as a lifeguard. He worked the day before. He stayed the night over at a friend's house. And then they walked downtown a bit and he went to go clean graffiti off of a school, I believe it was. I think I have the picture of him cleaning graffiti. Yep. Cleaning, people decided to spray paint bad words and stuff on buildings, and Kyle took it upon himself and other people decided to be productive and clean up their community. And the prosecutors got pretty annoyed when they're like, your community, you're not a resident of Wisconsin. And he's like, my dad lives in Kenosha. And that deadpan kind of voice in him that he has. So in all intents purposes, Kyle was doing good Samaritan sort of stuff that day. And he did have permission to protect the lot he was at. Actually, they had to give him the keys, and him and some other individuals. There's video evidence of him being like, I'm here, I'm a medic, I am armed, but I do have this, and I'm gonna help people. There's one point he was like sprayed in the face by, I think, a rider out there, and he's still going around saying, medic, anybody need help, anybody need help. And so no, he's not really an EMT. He does have some training from the various good civil groups that he's a part of. He does have some training, but even in the video where he was being interviewed by, I believe there was a Daily Caller reporter who testified, he said that EMTs will not come into these zones that aren't clear, which is true. So he was out there with intentions to help people. People say he was an active shooter. People said he was going there looking for blood. Okay, well, it's obvious that everyone that he killed was trying to attack him. Everyone he killed was trying to attack him. Everything was in self-defense. And you know what? It was pretty much known from the beginning. There was video this whole time of it. These media pundits that decided to spin these webs and just lie and lie and lie. it's really unforgivable. Young Turks, Anna Kasparian did actually apologize. I think she was still like spreading a little bit of misinformation afterwards, but she did mostly apologize for the stuff that she got wrong about Kyle. And I even saw some people going back and forth with her, upset that she apologized. And she's like, you don't think I should just own up to what I did? And so of course that you should, but still awful that they inflamed the population so much so that right now there are protesters at the courthouse ready to go. There are the National Guard has been called. They said there's feds all over Kenosha. They probably should not have tried it there. The jury is probably concerned, rightfully so. But that we have gotten to this point where we just allow these sort of show trials like this, where people, if they don't get the right verdict, that they're going to burn things to the ground. We should not have gotten to this point. And we shouldn't have got to this point at all with George Floyd, with people when they started the riots, the media pretending like they were just peaceful protests. I know people who went to protest and they're peaceful, and it was for, police to stop police brutality and stuff. And by the way, if you really care about those things, you need to find a libertarian leaning Republican, because I assure you they know more about this issue than the Black Lives Matter activists. Especially because here's an interesting graph, FYI, that shows people's biases. The more liberal you are, the more wrong and your perception is skewed about police shooting statistics. We have people, even conservatives, who believe that more than 10,000 unarmed Black men were killed in 2019. That's pretty incredible, but you can understand why some tensions are high if people are this deranged. Now, the answer, I don't remember the exact answer, it might have been like 14, but it was definitely less than 20. So this is what people believe. People believe there was more than 100, more than 1,000, more than 10,000, about 10,000. So the more left-leaning you are, the more wrong you are about this issue. But you can understand people being so emotional about it. Then a lot of people who are really emotional and go to these things are mentally disturbed. Again, what are the odds that everyone Kyle was attacking, or who attacked him and he shot, were career criminals? Career criminals, including Gage, the one who survived, Hoover, the second man who died, he was a domestic abuser. But the worst one, of course, was Rosenbaum. Rosenbaum, who was a serial child rapist. And I would like to know why he's even on the streets. That's what I want some background information on. Why is he even on the streets? Tucker Carlson had some pretty funny commentary about it.
A rapist called Joseph Rosenbaum was released from a mental hospital and then went directly to join the mob that was burning downtown Kenosha. Once he got to the riot, Rosenbaum saw Kyle Rittenhouse and immediately threatened to kill him. Rosenbaum then chased Rittenhouse and tried to pull the gun from his hands. When he did that, Kyle Rittenhouse shot him. So Joseph Rosenbaum died as he had lived, trying to touch an unwilling minor.
Yeah, child rapist. It sounds so ridiculous that it sounds like something a right-wing person would make up to make a point. But I guess we don't have to make up stuff. So people say that Kyle just going there, being armed, is a provocation. You have to realize that he's not the only one who tried to protect his stuff, and people went crazy. People went crazy. Now, I'm going to play some videos, and some of them will have some swearing in them. I like to usually edit it out. I didn't have time. So we're adults. The F-bombs it's not my favorite thing, but you guys will live. So I'm going to play a couple of videos that just show rioters going around breaking stuff, rioters arguing with people. Here's a man. He's arguing with the protesters. And at one point they're going to mess up his truck, and they're like, you got to get out of here. And they're defending why they're there and so on. It's just really crazy.
That's what the fuck's going to happen. What y'all don't fucking understand is that people have their lives in these businesses too.
We don't know what. We paid for that. We paid for that. Black people.
So what? Just because y'all are too scared to go deal with the cops, y'all just going to burn the whole town?
Yes.
Yeah. Y'all got mace and shit like that. Y'all took off. Take your issues up with them. This is them. No, it's not. Do you know how many people? A furniture store is the police? A furniture store is the police? A dealership is the police?
I'm talking about the PO office. This is a state-owned building, bro. This has
Bust my shit.
Then you need to go. For real. No business for you being here. That's all.
Hey, I suggest you leave because they ain't playing right now.
Right.
They gonna fuck this shit up.
Bye. Have a nice day.
Yeah, you. Tell you, bro. Go ahead. It's my business. I don't give a fuck. Come on up.
We'll burn yourself down too. We'll burn you down too.
They said we'll burn yourself down too. And those kids look really young. So not everyone there at the riots, obviously we're probably career criminals, but the left is making the world more crazy. Instead of saying, hey, you have some kind of issue, let's work out why do you feel that way and try to break it down. They always try to blame someone else. And so they feel entitled to go out to places and burn it to the ground. They think that man being there and bothering them, he's ruining their riot. The people who are trying to protect their property, they're entitled. They're breaking up their fun. And you should just learn to live with your stuff being burned to the ground, your stuff being destroyed. And he makes a point. People's lives are into these things. People saying it's just property, like Don Lemon, which I think I'll play a little bit of his clip again. I did like a whole episode just ranting about like how it's basically supporting communism now, where people have this idea that like it's just property, let it go. People invest so much time into these things. People have the right to defend themselves, to defend their property. You can't just go in and just destroy it. And then even if you burn it to the ground, like, oh, they have insurance. It brings property value goes down. Sometimes people are like, if you let my stuff be destroyed here, I'm not going to rebuild here. I'm going to go somewhere else. It ruins everything about the community. The Detroit riots that happened, that devastated the city. Now people have been trying to bring it back and so on and so on. But you had the white flight and other stuff that happened after that. When you start having these riots and look, it just spread like it was a disease from the mentality from George Floyd to into this case with Jacob Blake, which people were protesting. The police came onto the scene because he showed up at a woman's door. His ex's. There was a restraining order because she filed charges because he allegedly digitally raped her. And he showed up. She called the police. He had a knife. The media said he was unarmed. He wasn't unarmed, and he would not comply. He would not heed. They ended up shooting him. Those cops were not charged. So they deemed that what they did was okay. But these people, I mean, that they deemed that after the fact, but they were willing to burn down Kenosha night after night. The mayor, who's been there for a very long time, he left and then came back, who's related to the mayor is related to the lead detective in the case. And they have a lot of different political operatives in around in the area, but charging Kyle was clearly political. And the craziest thing that happened, one of the craziest things in the trial was learning that they had a warrant for Gage Grosseritz. I think that's how you say his last name, but he's the one who got shot in the bicep and survived. They had a warrant for his phone, and they decided not to execute the warrant. Why? Well, they were advised that there were some concerns about Marsy's Law, which apparently didn't apply. But the prosecutors, Mr. Binger with the glasses, apparently he was one of the people who brought up the concerns. So they didn't execute the warrant. Perhaps they didn't execute the warrant because they were concerned about what they would find on the phone, because this fool said stuff to his roommate like, my only regret is that I didn't kill the kid. And the roommate was dumb enough to post it on social media. Now, he got on the stand and claimed that Gage never said that, and he just made it up to defend his friend. But you don't, just a little heads up, you don't defend your friends by telling the world that they wish that they had killed a 17-year-old kid. That's not how you defend your friends on social media. So he got on the stand and said he didn't say that. So either he lied on the stand or he lied on social media. But just mind you, Gage is suing the city, And the outcome with the Rittenhouse case will determine how much money, or it'll come into play about how much money he's going to get, which I don't understand why he would get any money and think he could win a lawsuit. He should not get a dime. He was out there rioting. People say Kyle shouldn't have been out there, but there were rioters out there acting a darn fool. And they feel it's, people are mad that Kyle was there to defend property, someone's business. And it's crazy to me. If I had a business and there were riots and I called some of my friends because the government just decided that they weren't going to do anything, and I said, hey, can you help me like protect my shop or protect my whatever it is, protect my church? I would definitely want to protect my church. And if people said, yeah, we will be there, and some altercation happened and someone got in trouble and people are like, well, they shouldn't have been there protecting your church or protecting their home, protecting their business. It's just property. That's insane to me, but that's where we're going. They feel like everyone should just retreat and let the world become Chaz zones and let us be overtaken by random rapper warlords. Those are basically the arguments that people are making. People who don't like Kyle, because all the evidence is on Kyle's side. All the evidence is on Kyle's side. People just have a narrative on why they think he was so in the wrong. So I showed you guys this video of people telling this man about to break his stuff in his car, and he got hyped with them. They're like, well, the police, we have a problem with the police. They suppressed us, blah, blah, blah. Just young children saying this who've been brainwashed by the mainstream media, these, critical race theory proponents and everybody who was willing to give them excuse to be insane. They took it so they could do evil. Let's look a little bit more. So just a little reminder, they're going around just breaking stuff, setting stuff on fire. So a little bit more of the damage. Here's someone who's an armed protester walking around with a gun, and they stop a police vehicle.
You guys are instigating. You know you're instigating. Oh, they're gonna shoot the gas out the top. Kick that shit back. Gas us. Gas. Gas. You're a fucking coward. Don't point it. I'm not pointing already. Gas!
That goes on for a while. They do end up gassing them, but they told the police, you're instigating. By being there, doing their job, you're instigating. So this narrative that Kyle being there to protect property and having a gun, it just kind of seems like a wash to me, because regardless of if you're there and if you're not just rioting and letting them destroy property and stuff, then you're instigating them regardless, that you're a problem regardless. So we have this really bizarre narrative that they just keep fighting for and pushing. So this is one of the craziest videos from Kenosha and the riots. This man protecting his property. Again, this one has quite a bit of swearing in it, but I want to show it to you guys.
This poor man got his business caught on fire. I'm sorry, sir. I'm very sorry about that, man.
Yeah, really.
Hey, I have nothing to do with that. I'm trying to stop this shit here. Dude, I'm gonna help this guy. I don't give a fuck if I get beat up.
Oh, tuck, look. Just leave it there. Tuck.
They just threw a bottle at this guy. Hey, hey, hey! No! No! Sir. Are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay? Turn his head. He was just defending his business, that's all he was doing. And they walked up and fucked him up. I have it all on video.
Listen,
all of it. He didn't deserve any of that. Any of it. This is just wrong, guys. Do you not see this? This is wrong. This is what's going to happen to every one of you when this goes nationwide. I don't think you realize this. Please, guys.
We're trying to protect ourselves.
Hey, you got alcohol in the
You don't understand
alcohol?
what terrifies these black men out here. They're not making it home to their
no,
families. Understand. Respect. How about that? It's called respect.
So, of course, what happened in that video was awful. This man was trying to protect his stuff. He got a fire extinguisher. He's spraying some of the people, I guess, looting his business, and they attack him. He's extraordinarily hurt, and then one girl's like, "Well, he was laying women out," and you know she swore when she said it. She's like, "He was laying females out." What kind of sexist nonsense is that? Like, you should be like, "Oh, you know what? You're a female, so I'm just gonna let you, I don't know, take my stuff and run, loot my stuff and run, destroy my property and run, because I can't do anything because you're a woman." He didn't like punch her, knock her out. He didn't shoot them. He just had a fire extinguisher and was just spraying them. He was laying females out with the air. So and then they're just steadily like, we're protecting ourselves because these black men. Again, I showed you guys. People have a really skewed perception on what the numbers are. They have an extraordinarily skewed perception on what these numbers are. Because the truth is that it's less than 20. But people think that there's at least more than 10,000 black men that could have been killed by the police in a single year. So when you understand why some of these people are so deranged, it's because of lies that the media pushes, like hands up, don't shoot. That was CNN. They talk about this stuff nonstop. We have television shows that did just extraordinary propaganda. If you watch a SWAT that's on CBS, they had extraordinary propaganda. It was well executed. I give it to them. But propaganda nonetheless. I believe that Shamar Moore in that show. To get people riled up to feel a particular sort of way. I never gave any leeway on Black Lives Matter. I never liked them. I looked up their stuff early on when they first started as a group. I didn't like the sort of things that were in what they were saying that they're about really early on, because they really made it clear that that politics really was above their mission of helping Black people. They even had something early on that was to the regard of that they will focus more and prioritize on like trans women be more than like just normal Black men, because they're in more I don't know, they're picked on more or something like that, which there is not an epidemic of people just attacking trans people dying. I know like Joe Biden and other people try to make that case, but the reason why they have a high percentage of, I guess, fatalities is because some of them will be like hookers and stuff like that. So if you are in industries where crime and violence is more likely to happen, you're going to have more likely people being killed. So so that's another leftist thing that they push that could be easily debunked, but they love their narrative more. So when Black Lives Matter started to get just more and more and more traction, and this past year when I went on their website, I was still surprised they had like language that was pretty similar to when I looked at it years ago. But their what we're about page, the two craziest things they had: one, they want to dismantle cisgender privilege. And if you've ever looked at stuff that they say is cisgender privilege, not specifically Black Lives Matter, but Katie Couric interviewed someone who was on I think it was like a documentary, something that she did. and they had a blog about cisgender privilege, and something that was cisgender privilege could be, you can find the right shoe in your size. You can go to a prison of your distinguished gender and not have to be worried about being placed in a place that doesn't align with your identity. So I'm like, when you want to dismantle cisgender privilege, what exactly are you trying to do? And why is that a mission of Black Lives Matter? But really the biggest thing was disrupting the nuclear family. Because if you really do care about any sort of families, not just Black families and Black communities, you know that the nuclear family is pretty much the glue. So if you want to disrupt those things, you're probably a bad organization. They didn't take that off their website until like some mainstream people started saying it, like on Sports Center and stuff like that, and different interviews, and then they took that down. But the internet's forever, and I did not forget. And it really bothered me that Christians were supporting BLM and stuff. I wrote an article on my website, Black Teen News, about how Christians were duped by the organization. So if you want to check that out, please go to the website and find it. I even talked about the phrase "all lives matter," or people getting offended by that, and why I thought that was dumb. So people start trying to distinguish the group and the movement on the organization. I'm like, the organization is, I can understand you want to separate it, but they belong to each other. And who are you to say that they are separate? But even if you want to separate the two, the ideology that cops are just going around hunting down Black people, there's not evidence to support that. There's just not. And people really wanted to get justice reform. Even Republicans were pushing justice reform last year. And Tim Scott was trying to push it, and he got shot down by the Democrats because they didn't want to give them a win on the issue. I'm like, I want more people arrested. Like those people who committed those crimes in those videos. Like, we should be going to town, arresting more people. So I'm like, I'm not really in the justice reform mood right now. I just want some justice. Can we get some justice before the reform, at least? Can we get some justice before the reform? I didn't play for you guys. Jen Psaki was asked about Joe Biden's comments regarding Kyle Rittenhouse, and she sighs heavily, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe someone's asking me this question.
Something tied to an ongoing court case. Why did President Biden suggest that Kyle Rittenhouse, on trial in Kenosha, is a white supremacist?
So, Peter, what I'm not going to speak to right now is anything about an ongoing trial, nor the president's past comments. What I can reiterate for you is the president's view that we shouldn't have, broadly speaking, vigilantes patrolling our communities with assault weapons. We shouldn't have opportunists corrupting peaceful protests by rioting and burning down the communities they claim to represent anywhere in the country. As you know, closing arguments in this particular case, which I'm not speaking to, I'm just making broad comments about his own view. There's an ongoing trial. We're awaiting a verdict. Beyond that, I'm not going to speak to any individuals or this case.
But the president has spoken to it already. And his mom now, Kyle Rittenhouse's mom, came out saying that the president defamed her son, and that she claims that when the president suggested her son is a white supremacist, he was doing that to win votes. Is that what happened?
I just have nothing more to speak to an ongoing case where the closing arguments were just made. Go ahead.
So I hope he's innocent. Well, he's obviously innocent, that they go by the obvious evidence of the case, and that Peter Doocy comes back like, okay, well, they have deliberated. So now can you answer my question, Jen? Because what Joe Biden did was really disgusting. I'm reading your comments as I go along, and someone said, man, your country's really messed up. And I'm just like, right now it is. It's so sad. So it's crazy how this case has like really gripped the country. I was listening to Ben Shapiro. He was talking about this today too. He brought up how the media put their decisions about what becomes a national story and what doesn't become a national story. Like the Gosnell case, where he was committing infanticide. He was an abortion doctor, and he would do very, very, very late term abortions. He was keeping all kinds of pieces. His clinic was really disgusting. So even if you're like 100% for abortion, even if you're for the as late as they were doing it, when it's like practically whole babies coming out, they were not keeping up to a good standard. So you could come in for your abortion and whatever, and all of a sudden you got an STD because of they didn't clean stuff properly. So the media didn't want to cover that case. I remember it to agree, people talking about it a little bit when it happened, but the media really didn't want to talk about that case. That was something that easily could have been a national news story. But they didn't really cover that to that regard. This Rittenhouse thing, everybody's talking about it all over the world. Everybody's talking about it. Apparently, I got people from all over the world watching this right now. So it is curious what they decide to make mainstream national news. Now, I'm seeing some really crazy commentary about people saying if this would be totally different if Rittenhouse was black, which again, I don't understand why people have to impart race. Candace Owens said that people were messaging her calling her a race traitor because she was defending Kyle Rittenhouse, and implying that, there's people who think that he's killed black people. And I think that that's true. I don't doubt that, because I know that I've seen people admit that they thought that Kyle killed black people. And I was talking to my mom about, I'm like, there people are concerned there's gonna be riots. And she's like, why are they gonna riot? And they didn't kill no black people, so why are they gonna be out there rioting? Not that yeah, I just don't think people would do it for white folks. I think a lot of people are confused, and they're so devoted to their ideology. So I think it is kind of weird to people like, y'all still gonna do that? But there's people who want to, and if people will give them cover for it, I guess that's what they're going to do. And Business Insider, I talked about this on my show before, they had an article saying overwhelmingly white jurors will decide the fate of Kyle Rittenhouse and Ahmaud Arbery's killers. So why are people comparing these two cases together? They are not the same. And Kyle Rittenhouse, Jen Psaki said Biden doesn't want to comment on vigilantes. Oh, you have a case with the Arbery, and I don't know that case as well as I know the Rittenhouse case, but it would appear that one is more like of a vigilante story versus Kyle, who has a very clear case of self-defense. He's not like Batman, who was just leaping on top of criminals saying, "You're going to jail, where's the trigger?" Like, that's not what happened with Kyle. He was attacked, he was chased by mobs and so on, and every person that he shot or intended to shoot was attacking him. It's not like he killed like a stray person or something like that. Everyone who was attacking him, he shot, were attacking him. It was all in self-defense, and in hindsight, we all know that they were all career criminals. Even the black man who wasn't named at the trial, who was stomping his face in, was also a criminal as well, as we're learning. So it's not really the same, but they're very devoted to tying race together. So I even saw someone tweet out, give your black employees the day off after the verdict is read, because they need it, like emotionally, I suppose. Why would we need that? It has nothing to do with us. It has nothing to do with us. And people don't need the day off because of a trial that happened. We talk about like people don't like the fact that Kyle was there because they're trying to claim it's not his community, wasn't his business. What a business is it that people should be emotionally invested that they'll have to take the day off from work? And it's just a really crazy, bonkers, bizarre thing to say now. So again, it has nothing to do with race. They're really trying to make it racial. He's not a white supremacist. Joe Biden, everyone else who claimed he was, I hope they're sued into oblivion. But for the news commentators and everyone still trying to push that message, like Business Insider and so on, it's really crazy. So to the people out there who asked the question, what would have happened if Kyle Rittenhouse was black? I think there's two possible answers. One, probably wouldn't be a national news story like it is. I think that's probably one of the most obvious. Two, the same thing, the absolute same thing, because at the end of the day, ideology is more important. And if he was a black Trump supporter or something, then they would still be upset and say he was radicalized by Trump, and they would still call him a white supremacist. If people can call Winsome Sears, the new lieutenant governor of Virginia, a white supremacist, if Michael Eric Dyson can get on MSNBC on Joy Reid's show and call every black person who thinks differently than him a puppet of white supremacists, that a black mouth is moving, but a white person is speaking and white supremacist ideas are coming through. He said that about Kanye West. He said about Winsome Sears. He said that about Daniel Cameron. He goes on and on and on. He said worse things about Clarence Thomas, and I'll just not repeat them right now because I would rather not get some kind of strike. But there were Holocaust references. And that's the person they call. And when the host of The Bachelor, when he needed to be reformed, that's who they call, even though he called Jordan Peterson a mean, mad white man. There's obviously racist black people in America, even though I heard that he was the one who started that way of thinking that black people can't be racist. I know I've heard him say it for a long time. I don't know if he mainstreamed that or not, but he may have. But obviously he's one of those racist people, and he convinced people that he's not racist because black people can't be racist. So I think if he was black, I think either one, it just wouldn't be a national news story like it is. I'd probably still be talking about it, but it wouldn't, I wouldn't be talking probably as much because there wouldn't just be as much interest, and people probably wouldn't be just talking about it in general. If he was actually black, or people would still be calling him a white supremacist, indoctrinated by Trump ideas, and they would be tying him with Candace Owens and other people and saying these black Republicans are dangerous. It may even be worse if he was black, honestly, but they're trying to say Kyle was able to make it home because he was white. Well, he also surrendered himself to the police as well. So there's every case is different, including the police officers who are involved in these incidents. There's lots of different things to consider when stuff like that happen. But they could just drop the whole racial thing. Interestingly enough, let's talk about a case where there were some minorities who were involved, some minority minors involved in a crime. Not too long ago, if you guys recall, during the summer, there were two young black ladies, 13 and 15, who hijacked a car of an Uber driver, a man from Pakistan, and he lost his life.
This morning, two teenage girls arrested, charged with felony murder and armed carjacking after police say they violently attacked and killed an Uber Eats driver in Washington, D.C. Police say the suspects, just 13 and 15 years old, were in the process of trying to steal 66-year-old Mohammed Anwar's car when one of them used a taser on him as they tried to speed off, which police say led to the deadly car crash, the car flipping over, Anwar ejected. He was rushed to the hospital with life-threatening injuries, but did not survive. The teens arrested at the scene. Anwar's loved ones calling the sudden loss immeasurable, telling ABC News the father of 3 and grandfather of 4 moved to the U.S. from Pakistan in 2014 to build a better life for himself and his.
Isn't that crazy? This man left to come to America, just doing a job. And I brought that up to say, I remember the commentary surrounding these girls. Now, one of the 13-year-old is now 14. And so, but it was a 13-year-old and 15-year-old at the time when this carjacking happened in broad daylight, mind you. Because that's just how bad DC is. They've had a radical spike in crime. A lot of places have. But carjacking in broad daylight, it's like, if only, and the thing about DC, and the story is just awful, but I'm just like, parking ticket meter people will beat on you in a second if you were like a minute over on your parking, but they can't stop carjacking. Okay. And it's just way up, and there's kids doing it, some kind of ring. I don't know if they ever figured out the mastermind behind that or not. But these two girls were charged for second-degree murder, and they're going to juvie until they are 21. And that's it. And they got convicted for killing this man. Now you can say, well, they didn't mean to do it. Well, they meant to carjack him with a taser, and he held on, tried to get them to get out, and they kind of drove off while he was hanging on to the side, and the car flipped over, and he died. And I don't know if you guys have seen that video, but it's horrific. And when the car was flipped over and the girls were getting out, one of them was like, my phone. And so people were horrified that a man was dying in the street after he was dragged, in the car as they were trying to speed off with their getaway. That instead of saying, "Oh my gosh, look what we have done," one of them was like, "Oh my gosh, where's my phone?" Um, I I guess it's possible they could have possibly just not have registered how bad things were at that time, but the commentary around this particular case where they're just what they did was wrong, but the man shouldn't have fought. That is just a car, and now his life is gone, and his property, it was just property. People make split decisions. That was still his property. They didn't have a right to take it. If he wanted to defend it, if he had a, I don't know how bad the laws are in DC about this stuff, but if he wanted to defend it, and fight those girls off, he sure darn well could have. And he would have been within his right to do that as well. I don't know how bad things are in DC right now. It's a crazy town. It's a crazy town. So people were like victim blaming him, like your life isn't worth your property. And I would agree with that, but you have to understand when people lose their property, depending on what it is, it's more than just metal and tires and so on. That was his business. He was an Uber driver. He used it to take care of his family. I'm pretty sure that if he could have had the option, knowing, like if there was an angel to appear and said, "Hey, you can you can fight off and protect this car, or you're going to die," he probably would have chose the not die option. But there was a lot of people who were like, he should just not fought them. And that was the take. And there are people who want to go really easy on these girls because they're young and they are minors. But you can't tell me that they were unaware of the fact that carjacking is bad. They obviously knew that they were committing a crime. And so I brought that up to contrast that with Kyle a bit. Now Kyle's older, but he's still a minor. And that's the reason why people say Kyle shouldn't have been there protecting that property, because he was a minor. But they feel that he's grown enough for them to send him to jail for the rest of his life. So I don't know, square that circle. But they wanted mercy on these girls, but they want to throw the book at Kyle. Kyle wasn't committing any crimes when he was there trying to put out fires and so on. I showed you those videos of some of the riots, which is a lot of stuff that you could go and watch online of all that stuff that was breaking. And thank God that there was people on the ground taking video of that, because the mainstream media, that's stuff they didn't want you to see. And there's stuff maybe some of you hadn't seen until I showed it to you. But they were mad at people who were trying to put out, who were trying to stop crime from happening, trying to stop crime from being committed against them. And they were still demeaned by protesters. I showed you videos of people being mad at the police and saying, "You guys are provoking us just simply by being there." There was a provocation. People are saying entitled, saying you have to go, you have to leave, and saying we're going to come to your business and burn stuff down. So the question is, how much are we supposed to take from society like this? Kyle shouldn't have had to have been there, because we should have never gotten to a situation where all of this stuff was ignored, or all of this stuff was even egged on, like the Minnesota Freedom Fund. Remember when Kamala Harris tweeted out, like, give here for these protesters? The Minnesota Freedom Fund, they're just against cash bail. They don't care what you did. They just believe that cash bail is bad. So you could be charged for convicted murder or something, and they will go ahead and pay it off to get you out. And actually, someone who they did get out did go and commit murder. So that drew some backlash to them. I don't think Kamala Harris ever gave comment on it. But it wasn't just Kamala Harris. Steve Carell from The Office, Harry Styles, I think, Seth Rogen, and a bunch of other people. I think I did a TikTok on it not too long ago, but you can find threads of celebrities who promoted this stuff, who egg people on and encourage them, who gave them this crutch to lean on, like, "Oh, we gotta do this because what are they doing to the black people in the streets?" Like, no, that doesn't excuse the kind of stuff that you're doing. One of the first really big TikTok videos that I did, there was a woman saying if they have to loot and burn everything to the ground, basically that's what they deserve after all the years of oppression to Black people. I'm paraphrasing. And then I did a reply. It was quite passionate, saying that you don't have the right to just go ahead and do this to people. And I can't articulate it in the anger that I sort of had back then. You can go back and watch it on my TikTok. But people called me a coon for just pointing out that, no, you don't have the right to burn and loot stuff. That you have a sense of entitlement. And I'm pretty sure that's where my saying of the be better, not better, that I put on a shirt that sometimes you guys have seen me wear on air sometimes. This shirt here, I'm pretty sure that's where that saying came from. That rant. These were people who were actually oppressed on this shirt. Douglas, Tubman, Carver. These people were actually oppressed. And they wanted to build a better world. They weren't like, let's go burn some crap up. Now, did they go within the, obviously Harriet had to skirt some laws and other stuff to do what she did with the, get people free. But once war was over, things started to change. They're not like, let's burn stuff up and be angry about the system. George Washington Carver, my gosh, he was so religious. Frederick Douglass, he was so religious. He was so religious and believed in Carver talked about not only wanting to help the minds of his students, but to also help guard their souls. And just read up some more on these people. I hated that the NFL started to use a Lift Every Voice in a political manner. And that's the Black National Anthem, for those of you who don't know. And yes, people have been calling that for a long time. Is an affectionate nickname. I don't want to go move to Wakanda and start my own nation. But that is just what people have called it. But there's lines in that song, like sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. So in other words, the sentiment of that song is, we've been through some stuff. We've been through some stuff, but because we have made progress from there to here, and God has helped us get through it, we can be optimistic and we can look around at the present because we have come so far, and because we were able to come so far from where we have been, we know that we have a brighter future to where we are going. So that is the real sentiment of that song. And the fact that people use it in a political manner to, one up the national anthem, which people used the national anthem because after the Civil War, people were so torn apart, obviously, that they needed some kind of national symbol. And since that song was about the flag still waving on, they're like, that is the song. Because there are other popular, more patriotic songs than the Star-Spangled Banner, but that became the thing because they realized the need for a national identity and national unity in some kind of symbol. But people have an invested interest in tearing America apart. I know I'm going kind of long today. I want to point to a few arguments that the self-defense made. The prosecution made that was so absolutely ridiculous. Well, first of all, if you're unaware that it was totally self-defense, I don't know if you guys have seen this. A lot of people have seen it, but with Gage admitting that Kyle did not point his gun until did not shoot until he pointed his gun.
It wasn't until you pointed your gun at him, advanced on him with your gun, now your hands down, pointed at him, that he fired, right?
Correct.
Oh shit! That's it. Directed verdict. Directed verdict on all the murder charges. Kyle knows.
Yeah.
Directed verdict on the murder charges.
He just exhaled. Kyle he looks like he's gonna cry.
How do you not acquit after that? Look at Bigger. Look at Big Boy. Oh, Big Boy. Oh.
So yeah, the prosecution was really upset about that because obviously that led to the obvious, this was in self-defense. There's plenty of video from the get-go that was in self-defense. They never, ever, ever, ever should have tried this case. The main DA did not allegedly, people on the inside are saying that the actual DA did not want to do this case, so they handed it down to Banker and Cross. Because they knew it was a loser. And if Kyle gets convicted, it'll be purely political. It won't be because the facts led to that conclusion. Absolutely not. So the pedophile tried to take his gun. He even had I think gunpowder on his hands. He lunged, tried to take it. Bam, gone. Other guy hit Kyle with a skateboard. Kyle, video of him on the ground. Someone kicking in the face. Obviously self-defense, and Gage admitted himself that Kyle didn't pull the trigger until he, pulled out his gun that he was not supposed to have, because he's not supposed to be concealed. He has, I think his concealed permit is expired or something because of his charges. So he was not supposed to have his gun. So Kyle was legally had a gun that was legal for Kyle to do, and the weapons charge was thrown out, but Gage was not supposed to have his gun. So obviously it was all self-defense, but the prosecution made some crazy, crazy remarks.
Convince you that Joseph Rosenbaum was going to take that gun and use it on the defendant, because they know you can't claim self-defense against an unarmed man like this. You lose the right to self-defense when you're the one who brought the gun, when you're the one creating the danger, when you're the one provoking other people. The defendant fired 4 shots at Joseph Rosenbaum and caused 5 wounds total. The first shot.
So if you have a gun, that's just provocation. This is an attack on our Second Amendment. And people are saying he shouldn't have been there. He shouldn't have having the gun. What was provocation anyway? Okay, why would you go there and not be armed, considering the sort of deranged people who were there? That there were actually career criminals. How many career criminals were there from all, and people traveled? I don't think Gage is from Kenosha. I think he's from Milwaukee, if I'm not mistaken. People traveled all across the country for these different riots. People should have been passing legislation ASAP that said if you traveled more than 20 miles to get here, you're going away for a very long time. If it is proven that you committed some kind of crime during these riots. That should have been happening nonstop. That's what should have been happening, but that's not so much what happened. I think some people tried to pass some stuff like that, but no, we were just talking about defunding the police. So just the fact that you are carrying you don't lose your right to self-defense like that. They're just straight up lying to people. And of course, they attacked him. He was chased by a mob. When he shot Gage, that was after he got hit by a skateboard and was on the ground, and people were kicking him in the face. And Gage's roommate, allegedly, according to his roommate, which he took back on the stand, but he's a liar, so I'm going to assume the first thing was probably true, that he said his only regret was not being able to kill Kyle. So yes, I do believe that they were probably going to kill this kid. And even if thank God he was armed, because you guys saw people who had fire extinguishers or whatever, or just was trying to protect the property of protesters coming after them and attacking them. So it just doesn't make any sense. It would make less sense if Kyle was not armed. It would make less sense if Kyle was not armed. Why would you go there and not be armed? That's the true question. So here's a crazy thing that the DA did, where they tried to downplay Rosenbaum and the sort of things he was doing that night.
He just happens to stumble into it. So what does he do that night? Oh, let me tell you all the awful things Joseph Rosenbaum did. He tipped over a porta potty that had no one in it. He swung a chain. He lit a metal garbage dumpster on fire. Oh, and there's this empty wooden flatbed trailer that they pulled out in the middle of the road, and they tipped it over to stop some bearcats, and they lit it on fire. Oh, and he said some bad words. He said the N-word.
Case closed right there. just like, he just downplayed saying the N-word, because I'm like, these people who are defending him are like, hey, this white guy was just yelling out the N-word. Is that, don't you get canceled over those things? Like, I know he's no longer with us, but like, aren't they be like put down your picket fences, right? Your picket signs, like, oh, well, he said the N-word. We can't support this guy. He was at a Black Lives Matter rally and riot and said the N-word. Like, we're still gonna stand. These people are crazy. And he downplayed that. It was just some fires. It was just some vandalism. It was just some arson. And he said the N-word. I could not believe. I could not believe they were saying this. The other DA, I thought I had the clip here. Maybe you didn't download, of them saying everybody gets beat up sometimes. So I guess that's what the state of Wisconsin wants that be the message, that you shouldn't have your right to self-defense, that you shouldn't, if you have a gun, that you should just let yourself be attacked, because everyone's got to get beaten up sometimes. And it's really, really absurd, because we have the gift of hindsight, right? We know that Rosenbaum was a serial child rapist. A serial child rapist. So Kyle was being chased by a serial child rapist, and he should have just taken his beating. Mind you, this man told Kyle earlier that night that if he caught them alone, he would kill him. So there's some premeditation there on Rosenbaum's part. And who's crazy enough to try to just grab an AR by the nozzle, by the barrel, just snatch it from the kid's hands. But that's the guy people are defending. There's a video of forget which right-wing outlet was there, but they're at the courthouse, and someone had a sign that said they're all superheroes. The Rosenbaum, Huber, and Grosowitz, Gage. I just gotta use his first name, guys. And they're like, like Rosenbaum's a rapist, right? And they're like, well, that's not relative to the case. They were out there trying to help that night. It's like, I'm pretty sure the child rapists and the domestic abuser weren't out there with good intentions. Now they should maybe would have it's plausible that at some point in time they probably could have thought that Kyle was causing trouble, but Gage was around when Kyle said, I'm going to the police. So he at least knew that he wasn't an active shooter. Maybe he didn't process that. But these weren't good people, and they weren't out with good intentions. So the defense saying that you just got to take a beating sometimes, and you don't just get to shoot people, knowing they know one of the people was a child rapist, a serial child rapist. So before we go into new rant, I'm gonna play something that Don Lemon said on CNN the other day. It was maybe Friday. I think it was Friday. About why these people protecting property and they're entitled.
There's this theme of white wannabe vigilantism that I think encapsulates both of these trials. And I wonder what you think about, look, laws aside, how is the defense doing aside? What do you think about just this idea that this is something people do, that in some places this is still okay?
Well, it's the same idea as I was saying about the judge. This is okay because people are used to it. This is the ultimate entitlement. That, again, you can insert yourself into a situation with a gun that you're not supposed to be carrying, kill two people, injure, and you are made to be a hero by the public. You see someone jogging down the street, and you take it into your hands. You think it's your responsibility to stop that person when you're not even sure if they are committing a crime, because what? It is your street. It is your town. It is your country. It is the ultimate degree of entitlement, where people believe that this is how they're supposed to be. What the right is saying about Kyle Rittenhouse is that, well, the government didn't do its job. So it took a 17-year-old kid to come in and do what was right. That's vigilantism. That's not what people are not supposed to be vigilantes. We're not supposed to be taking justice into our own hands. Imagine if every single person in America did that. Imagine if you call for black men or just black folks to be armed and go out in the streets and, do what they think. Justice, take it back. Remember, and what they did to you and slavery, whatever. Go and take things and do. Imagine if people were condoning that or just doing that. Would there be a different perception in this country about who should and who shouldn't carry guns? Would our gun laws be different? I certainly think so. So there is a double standard, but it is the ultimate degree of entitlement. This is what I'm supposed to do because this belongs to me, meaning this street, this town, and this country. And I think it's tough for people to hear that, but it is the absolute truth. I don't walk down the street saying, I pay taxes here and therefore no. If I see someone breaking the law, I call the cops. That's what they're there.
Okay, so FYI, I did go through that video on Friday, and as a matter of fact, I was at a funeral that day, and I had an event that night, and I was actually planning on not maybe doing a show, and I saw that, and I was like, you know what, I have to respond to this. So I did do a video. If you're interested in me going through like point by point and breaking that down, that was Friday's show. It's called Don Lemon is a Communist. But just to just refresher on that, he said, what if black people did this, or what would you say if people are like, oh, we're going to take this? Well, that's what happened with the riots that they were ignoring for a very long time. And he said, what if people, champion that? People did champion that, Dom Lemon. And I also play on Friday clips of them like, encouraging that as well. And they didn't want people shut that down. They didn't want Trump to shut that down. Tom Cotton at one point was like, we need to do the insurrection act, and they acted like, I don't know, that was a terrible crime against humanity, that to even like write an op-ed suggesting that they're mad when Trump was sending federal agents to protect monuments and stuff. And if you did want to protect your property, they're saying, oh, you value property more than black lives. Apparently you don't value your black life more than the property, since you're trying to steal stuff. You don't have the right to just take people's stuff. So he's saying it's a sense of entitlement. If you want to protect your town, your community, your street, he said your country. Okay, he said, what if everybody armed themselves and they wanted to do that? And, I don't know, maybe we'd have the American Revolution or something. It's important for the population to be armed in case the government gets too darn tyrannical. That's like why we started off, Don. Honestly. Kyle Rittenhouse, again, was not a vigilante. He was not going around just trying to arrest people, attack people. He was there to protect property, to be a deterrent, but also to help people. He was there with intention, with a med kit. As a matter of fact, the police gave him a bodysuit, like a vest, and he was like, I'm going to be helping people. That's what his focus was. So he gave it to someone else. So his intention was not to go and be the Christian Bale Batman or the one that's in the Snyder Cut or something. Like, that wasn't his intention that night. And there's ample evidence to suggest that is the case. So Don Lemon and everyone trying to have this narrative of we shouldn't empower these vigilantes. That's not what happened. That's not what happened. But even regardless of Kyle, I played you guys videos where people just had an attitude, when people were just trying to protect their own businesses, their own spaces. Just people just trying to drive through saying, please stop destroying stuff. This is people's livelihoods. And they're saying, we have to do this because black lives, blah, blah, blah. Stuff, it doesn't even make sense, but they're clinging onto their emotions so tightly that they can't stop. So it's like this case is, people are so addicted to talking about it because it's really bigger than Kyle, because the facts are totally on his side. The facts of the case are on his side, but the media has been pushing a narrative, a political narrative, for a very long time, and they don't want to let it go. That white supremacist, Trump crazed supporter, they're still the enemy. They're the enemy in Kyle's case. They're the enemy with the McCloskeys, even though the McCloskeys were like Democrats, I believe. That's with the school board meetings. Those are the enemies pushing that stuff. So much of the Justice Department involved and try to issue stuff in the National School Board Association, sending out a letter saying that, hey, these people can you use a Patriot Act on these parents? Our country has gone bonkers. Our country has gone bonkers. These people saying you shouldn't be protecting your house and your country. your street. Just call the police. Talk about entitlement. There's people who live in rural areas and their protection is their gun. Their protection is their gun. The police do not get there in the blip of a second. Maybe they do for Don Lemon, but that's not the truth everywhere. And that's not the truth in some of these communities where riots have devastated it and people are so angry at the police that they just decided to just back away and people have to deal with their own, issues because the police aren't going to get there within like 5 minutes. And sometimes 5 minutes is too long. So there's people who don't have the privilege of being Don Lemon where they can get on CNN every night and lie through their teeth. So I don't doubt that when Don Lemon is in trouble that he calls the police. I don't doubt that. I don't doubt that. But what do you do when the police aren't going to do their job? What do you do then? And by the way, the Supreme Court ruled that the police do not actually have a constitutional right to just go up and protect you. They don't have to do that. Your self-preservation, you protecting your family, that is on you. That is on you. It's nice to call the police. It's nice to have them, but that's on you. And mind you, people are saying that's the police's job while they were trying to actively defund the police, while they were actively trying to make sure that they could not do anything. What about people in in Washington, the state of Washington, where you have Antifa taking over like towns and citizens just living in terror for no reason? And I don't know how much terror people may be in. It looks like it, I don't know, fluctuates, but they gotta at least be annoyed 24/7. But at one point they have the Chaz, zones, and so many crazy things were going on. Oh my God! There was one reporter I watched a video. She was just walking through, and how they just intimidated her and just said such awful things. One woman was just deranged, yelling at her, and she ended up saying in the video that she was some kind of therapist or something. I'm like, that is what's wrong with our country. These people went to school and were indoctrinated and no one checked them, and they went out and they are professionals, and now the world is just full of professional lunatics because no one checked them because they're too busy pushing narratives the whole entire time. Remember in 2016 or 15 and so on, and Ben Shapiro and all these people go to these college campuses and people are having riots or trying to shut them down. And Milo Yiannopoulos went to one and they had like burning stuff and so on. And they would talk about it and people they'll grow out of it. It was pretty evident people didn't grow out of some of that stuff. It's very evident people didn't grow out of some of that stuff. And this judge, thank God for this judge who people are mad at because he had a ringtone that was God Bless America. I'm sorry, there's God Bless the USA. They're like, oh, Lee Greenwood did that song. Trump plays that at his rallies. This judge must be biased. I listened to that song prior to Trump becoming president. I've sung that song prior to Trump becoming president. Like, what do you mean? Even if you listen to the track, it sounds dated. But the judge who apparently likes his country, that's just so triggering. Why would the left allow themselves to be so disassociated with the flag, with loving the country, with patriotism? The right didn't do that. The left decided to make that choice. Someone just said it's a great song. God bless. It is a great song. God bless the USA. But they triggered people because it was the judge's ringtone. That judge is 70 years old. There's going to be a lot of other judges that are coming in from times because you got radical lawyers and radical prosecutors, George Soros and stuff put people up into different positions of power. And so it won't be too long that you'll have a lot of crazy judges who aren't going to care about the law, who are going to care about a narrative. Even like some of the Supreme Court rulings and you read like the leftist positions. I'm like, where's the law here? Like, it just sounds like your feelings got in the way here, ma'am or sir. So they can go all the way up to the, Supreme Court, which we hear about these cases more. There's probably a lot of people getting screwed at your local level. So I don't know what to say, guys, about the state of our country. Your Second Amendment with this case is being tried because they're trying to say that if you just have a gun, then you are being provocative. You're provoking people by just the nature of being armed, not lawfully unarmed, just armed, period. That they're provoked, therefore you lose your right to self-defense. That's what the prosecution was arguing. And they're arguing that you shouldn't be protecting property, especially property that's not your own. But Don Lemon's like, you're entitled if you want to protect your street. And that's the commentary that people are pushing. Do I legitimately think Don Lemon is a communist? I don't know. I would think not. But when you're still pushing this stuff anyway for political brownie points, might as well be, because there's still deranged. There's so many people who push politics and they'll go out and they'll hang out, and their lives will go on, but they're activating so many radicals. It's just gravely irresponsible. And I really hope that Kyle can just sue so many people, because I think that's the only way that a lot of these people will learn is if they feel it in their pocketbooks. The last thing I really want to talk about is this article that David French decided to write about Kyle Rittenhouse and how he said he's no hero. And he's like, he agrees that the facts are on his side, that it was absolutely self-defense. But he wrote in The Atlantic, and those of you who don't know, Atlantic is the ones who wrote that debunked hit piece on Trump and the losers and suckers story, which I did debunk also on blacktnews.com if you're interested in reading that. But he wrote, Kyle Rittenhouse is no hero. If a jury acquits him, it will not be a miscarriage of justice, but an acquittal does not make a foolish man a hero. So he, like I said, let me read a little bit of the beginning. As the Kyle Rittenhouse trial comes to a close, two things are becoming clear at once. First, absolutely no one should be surprised if Rittenhouse is acquitted on the most serious charges against him. And second, regardless of the outcome of the trial, the Trumpist right is wrongfully creating a folk hero out of Rittenhouse. For millions, he's become a positive symbol, a young man of action who stepped up when the police allegedly stepped aside. Well, that's true, though. It is true that he did that. Whether you think that was heroic or not, regardless, he did do that. That's not alleged. That's what happened. There's plenty of evidence that he was there to do positive things, that he wasn't there hunting down people. He didn't do that. Everyone who was shot by Kyle were people who were attacking him. It was absolutely in self-defense. And he was there. He was literally cleaning up graffiti. He was there to do medical stuff on people. There's video of that, evidence of that. And he did have permission to protect the car lot there that he was armed for. And he wasn't carrying illegally. But the thing about David French is, I don't know if the Trump folks are against it. He has to be against it because for some reason Trump broke these people. Trump broke him. Trump broke a lot of people. And he doesn't have to say, it's fine if you don't think Kyle Rittenhouse is a hero. But people saying that he did something wrong, that implies that he did something immoral. The most wrong thing I think he did is not call his mom and tell him where he was. And that was a heck of a phone call, I'm sure, when he called her and said, Mom, I killed someone. And she said, go to the police. That must have been a heck of a phone call. So just keep your parents in the loop of life. And if his mom knew, which some people I argue with, they thought his mom literally dropped him off at a riot with an AR-15. Like, have a nice riot, son. I was arguing with a Republican, allegedly, about it, and he didn't like Kyle. He thinks he's going to get off. And he thinks the judge is playing favorites. He was laughing about Kyle's breakdown, which he is being treated by for post-traumatic stress. And he said he was faking, and he said he believed his mom dropped him off at a riot. I'm like, so you don't even know the details of the case. I'm like, I understand people being passionate, but I don't understand people being passionate and uninformed at the same time. That's what I don't understand, because I wouldn't want to be spewing a bunch of stuff that was just demonstrably false and look like a moron. Especially stuff that's evidence that's been out for a long while. And I'm not saying I get everything right, but I don't understand people's confidence and being so wrong. And then I said, he worked in Kenosha, right? And he's like, he's 17. What job does he have? I'm like, you don't think 17-year-olds have jobs? So anyway, after I shut him down, he didn't say anything much else. But French goes on to say that the trial's gone poorly for the defense, and that the law is upholding, even though Kyle's a foolish man, he still has the right to defend himself. And it goes on, and people commenting under his post on Twitter, it's pretty interesting because they're just like, but he provoked them. Just really bad legal takes. People who I don't even know if they're watching the trial. He said the defense has presented evidence not only that Rittenhouse was attacked, but that there was a reason to believe he acted under Wisconsin law to prevent imminent death or great bodily harm to himself. The jury will have to determine whether Rittenhouse's beliefs was reasonable and whether it was reasonable for each person he shot. Of course it was. The narrow nature of self-defense inquiry is one reason people can escape responsibility for killings that are deeply wrongful in every moral sense. So I assume that's maybe a little general because he does talk about specific cases, but he also put it in this piece. So I'm assuming he's alleging that Kyle acted in an immoral, wrongful sort of way. Every life that he took were people who were trying to kill him, and one of them happened to be a child rapist. Granted, Kyle did not know that. We know that, at least. But they were trying to hurt him. So what he did, I don't know how you could say was immoral. He was protecting himself. He showed extraordinary trigger discipline. It's not like he sprayed people in a crowd. As a matter of fact, when these videos started to come out, that's the main compliment that people gave Kyle, was that he had tremendous trigger discipline. So pretending that he's somehow immoral for those men who are gone now, these career criminals, is pretty crazy to me. So he invokes like Breonna Taylor and other things to kind of make his point. But he goes on and says, when Kyle Rittenhouse walked the streets of Kenosha in the midst of an urban unrest following the police shooting of Jacob Blake, holding a rifle in the patrol carry or low ready position, similar to the positions used by soldiers walking in towns and villages in war zones without any meaningful training, he was engaged in remarkably dangerous and provocative conduct. So, he's supposed to be a staunch advocate of the Second Amendment, and he's saying Kyle walking around with the gun is provocative. Now, I played you guys videos. I don't know how long some of you have been with me, but I played a video of a police car, and people were just saying, you're provoking us. Just the police being there, you're provoking us. People yelling at people who were trying to protect their businesses. Like basically, it seemed like provoking people was simply you not allowing them to burn stuff to the ground. That's what it seems like provocation is. So people going along with this narrative that people were provoked, people who definitely should not have been there. And French could have made a long, lengthy article about how people shouldn't have been there, but he decided to talk about Rittenhouse. Also, I don't know how deep his firearm training is, but again, he had extraordinary trigger discipline. So he had some kind of training. He's not an expert by any means, but he knew how to handle his firearm for sure. Which, unlike Binger, the prosecutor who put his finger on the trigger, did not check if the gun was loaded and pointed it at the jury. If you have not seen it, it was pretty irresponsible. I hope that man is disbarred for a lot of reasons. He said, but dangerous and provocative conduct did not eliminate his right of self-defense. And that self-defense claim is a key issue of his trial, not the wisdom of his vigilante presence. Again, Kyle's not a vigilante, and calling him a vigilante is insane. And it's dishonest. This man is dishonest. How did Trump break this man so? This man is supposed to be a conservative. And Trump just broke him. That he can't even think straight. But that brings us to the danger of Kyle Rittenhouse as a folk hero. It is one thing to argue that the law is on Rittenhouse's side. Yeah, it is. And there is abundant evidence supporting his defense. Yeah, it is. But it is quite another to hail him as a model for civic resistance. It's not resistance. He was just protecting his community, which is his community. As seen in Kenosha, in an anti-lockdown protest in Washington state, and in the riot in Charlottesville, one of the symbols of the American hard right is the patriot openly carrying an AR-15 or similar weapon. The gun picture is a common pose for populist politicians. Mark and Patricia McCloskey leveraged their clumsily and dangerous brandishing of weapons at Black Lives Matter protesters into an appearance at the Republican National Convention. Again, I'm pretty sure the McCloskeys, I think one of them running for Senate or is running for Senate now. From my understanding, I believe that they were Democrats, but people were coming upon their property, and how people were acting throughout all these riots. Maybe they shouldn't have brandished their weapons in such a way, but they were definitely trying to act as a deterrent from people coming and ruining their stuff. And one of the people who led that march is now in Congress, Cori Bush. I think they got off on their charges too. So this idea attacking people who carry the AR-15, I've gone to a lot of rallies with people carrying their guns. And if you've never been to those rallies and you don't know those kinds of people, which I can't advocate for, I guess, everyone. I don't know everyone in the crowd. And there's definitely some not dangerous people, but there's some different people, I guess we'll put it that way, that can sometimes go to stuff like that. But if something popped off, I'm like, there's plenty of people I know who are armed and know how to use a gun, including people who are concealed carrying, who I feel pretty confident that they could take out a threat. So if I go to some kind of event, I'm good. But I understand that people like to carry their guns, and it is a sign of freedom for them because they are exercising their Second Amendment right. They're exercising their Second Amendment right. So to some people, holding a gun is just as patriotic as holding a flag. They are exercising their right. So I understand people not loving it. And even at some events, there have been like, even Republican events, there have been people like, please like leave your ARs or whatever at home, especially during election season when stuff got to get super heated. And they were just, that was more of an optics thing. It wasn't people feeling that it wasn't good to have the guns, but it was just kind of like to push back against the media. So French coming out against these sort of patriot people who like to carry their AR-15s, which they look really cool. I need to have some more weapons training myself before I get something like that. I've only gone shooting like the one time, and I had fun. My sisters liked the fact that they were better at it than me. But definitely gonna have one of those bad boys. Again, they're just practicing their Second Amendment rights. He goes on, Rittenhouse is the next step in the progression. He's the patriot who didn't just carry his rifle, he used it. He used it in self-defense. He's not a vigilante, which he's already called him that. So he's already has this particular bias set up, and things that just aren't true about this kid in the case. He said, I'm a longtime supporter of gun rights and believe that the Second Amendment's guarantee of a right to keep and bear arms is grounded in an inherent right of self-defense, both inside and outside of the home. As a person who's been threatened more than once, I exercise those rights myself. But there is also an immense difference between quiet concealed carry and vigilante open carry, including in ham-handed and amateurish attempts to accomplish one of the most difficult tasks in all of policing, imposing order in the face of civil unrest. I don't think Kyle was trying to impose order. He was trying to stop a business from being burned down. And he literally was putting out fires. He was literally putting out fires. I showed you guys a video of someone who had a fire extinguisher. He was attacked. Old man attacked. And they felt justified in doing it. While he's bleeding and like unconscious and the woman is screaming, they're like, well, we got it, because what they do to these black men out in these streets, that's why we had to. So I don't want people to pretend like Kyle carrying a gun wasn't a good idea. And he definitely wasn't a vigilante. So I don't understand French. It's just his pride, I guess, that he has to feel he hated Trump so much and he has to be so opposite of these Trump supporters. Maybe it's just an elitist thing too, that they feel far more sophisticated than the I don't know, the Trump hick or something. So they have to bring them down so they can get adulation from people who will still hate them on the left. They can post crap in the Atlantic and people will be like, oh yes, thank you for writing that, Mr. French. And he said, and there is a dramatic difference between the use of weapons as a last resort when your life or the lives of others are in immediate danger, and the open carrying of weapons as an intimidation tactic or as an intentionally disconcerting display of political identity and defiance. If people are carrying their guns in a which is their Second Amendment, and they're doing it in a First Amendment sort of way to just say, hey, I'm proud of this way that I have this freedom and I have this liberty, people can keep doing that as long as it's legal. It's their Second Amendment right. And people do that. Black people do that, white people do that, Republicans do it, Democrats do it. I think more Republicans do it than Democrats for sure. But I don't think that's going to change. And having such a snooty attitude towards these people is silly. Kyle did use his gun in a last resort method. He was carrying it, sure, and it would have been not legal if he had a pistol. If he had a pistol and was concealed carrying it, that weapons charge would have gone against him. The fact that he had the AR-15, that's what made it legal for him. If he was carrying a pistol, that weapons charge would not have been dropped. But it's a good thing he was armed. People talked about a Daily Caller reporter who interviewed Kyle quite a bit and was there when Rosenbaum was first shot. He talked about how Kyle seemed naive in the sense that he didn't understand how much danger was sort of around him. And so, I mean, this is a kid who's a lifeguard. He was some kind of like firefighter volunteer kid and something else with the police. I mean, it seems like he's an idealist. And he got into a bad situation. I'll go on. Most of the right-wing leaders voicing their admiration for Rittenhouse are simply adopting a pose. On Twitter, talk radio and Fox News host and right-wing personalities express admiration for Rittenhouse, but no, he was being foolish. They would never hand a rifle to their own children and tell them to walk into a riot. They would never do it themselves. And again, Kyle's mom didn't tell him to do that. I'm not saying that French is saying that. But I think most people would not tell their children to do that. But if they were all protecting their own business or something, maybe they would arm their kids and they'd all protect it like some rooftop Koreans. Sure. I think people would do that. Would they be like, hey, take this gun and go protect someone else's stuff while they watch from home? That would be awful. But masculinity is rapidly declining in the world and in the country. And I think there's just a lot of people who don't want to stand up and do the right thing. And so it just kind of seems like people really wanted to just let this stuff burn down. And if you were willing to do something about it and stand up and say no, you don't, they use a phrase, you value property more than Black lives. There's always an excuse for you not standing up for your rights. And this is like a bigger idea, I think, even than just like this case that we're talking about, even like with some of the lockdown measures and the COVID vaccines. I think a lot of people are still pushing for other people to get that stuff, not because they think the science is there, because they definitely weren't promised shot after shot and booster after booster, like indefinitely, it looks like right now. They conceded, they bent the knee, so they want you to bend the knee. They're willing to bend the knee, so they don't like that other people are willing to stand up and not bend the knee. I think that's really what it comes down to in a lot of regard for a lot of things nowadays. So maybe you wouldn't I hope no one would hand their kid a rifle and drop them off at a riot. I hope no one would do that. And that's not what happened here, FYI. But I hope no one would do that. But if a grown person was like, we got to protect this business, we got to protect our community and stop it from burning down, that would be good. As a matter of fact, there were activists well, not activists. There was times when Black Lives Matter like rioters came to communities and other Black people were like, y'all got to get out of here. Y'all got to leave. And if more people would have stood up to this insanity, and instead of allowing it to spread from the George Floyd riots to so on to here in Kenosha, Kyle wouldn't have been there that night. Officer Dorn wouldn't have died, and other people who died in these riots, these people wouldn't have been hurt. We wouldn't have millions and did it get to billions of property and damage? So someone has to stand up, but it just seems like people don't want people to do that. He goes on, but these public poses still matter. When you turn a foolish young man into a hero, you'll see more foolish young men try to emulate his example. And although the state should not permit rioters to run rampant in America's streets, random groups of armed Americans are utterly incapable of imposing order themselves, and any effort to do so can lead to greater death and carnage. No, I don't think everyone should just go and be vigilantes. But if people have to be some rooftop Koreans to keep their livelihood from just being utterly destroyed, I think that people should be able to do that. If they feel it's worth the risk, that's their property. I definitely think people should be able to do that. In fact, that's exactly what happened in Rittenhouse's case. He didn't impose order. He didn't stop a riot. He left a trail of bodies on the ground, and 2 of the people he shot were acting on the belief that Rittenhouse himself was an active shooter. He had, after all, just killed a man. Gage there's video of Kyle saying he was going to the police. He knew, or should have known, that Rittenhouse was not an active shooter. And Kyle didn't go there to stop a riot, and he didn't go there to impose order. He was there to be a medic to people, whether they were people against the riots or they were rioters, or protesters, we'll call them. He was there to help people. That was his goal, and he was also there to protect a business keep it from being burned down. So saying he didn't stop a riot, he wasn't trying to. To say he left a trail of bodies on the ground, people who tried to kill him, yeah. And maybe some of them thought he was an active shooter. But who do you think? It's so what? You're gonna paint these serial criminals, one of them being a rapist, as good Samaritans, but Kyle, who was there to actually help the community, and it is his community, you keep calling him a vigilante? Okay. He says, if the jury acquits Rittenhouse, it will not be a miscarriage of justice. The law gives each foolish man the right to defend their lives. But an acquittal does not make a foolish man a hero. A political movement that turns a deadly and ineffective vigilante into a role model is a movement that is courting more violence and encouraging more young men to recklessly brandish weapons in dangerous places, and that will spill more blood in America's streets. Well, first of all, we do need stronger policing. We need to make sure that nothing like this can ever happen or will happen again. And the fact that there's protesters already at the courthouse, and I've been on here for a while, so I don't know what's going on right now, says all that there needs to be said right now, that people still believe they can get away with this crap. And they were trying to people found out real fast that defund the police wasn't a good idea. People found that out really quick. In Minnesota, they defunded some stuff, and then they had to end up putting money back in. So they found out really quick that all the stuff that they were fighting for was dumb. But trying to keep police from doing their jobs, and being mad when President Trump was stopping people from vandalizing federal property, or going crazy when Tom Cotton suggested using the Insurrection Act. I think they were like, I can't remember which publication he did that, but they said people reportedly needed like therapy or something, some kind of work therapy after he posted it, because we have such losers in mainstream media that are so sensitive over nothing. It's not just media though, like mainstream media. I mean, like Netflix, like they had employees upset because of Dave Chappelle and so on. We just a world full of wussies, I guess. he wasn't there trying to be a vigilante, and it's so dishonest that he said that. The truth about Kyle, what was he a hero? He saved no one's life but his own that day. But he did go there with the intention of doing something heroic. And the truth is that the police didn't do their jobs, that the mayors didn't do their jobs, the governor didn't do their jobs, that people didn't want the President Trump to interfere. And so there was too much kind of political heat on stuff. So no, they weren't going to do the Insurrection Act or something like that. And he's like, if you want some help, you have to ask me. And there are people who weren't going to ask him. So people just had to kind of sit back and suffer. So there are people who only had themselves to rely on. And there are people who decided that they were going to rely on a kid. The people who gave him the keys and stuff, and other people. Now, maybe they probably didn't know he was 17. So they probably didn't know he was so young being there. But he wanted to help. There's plenty of evidence that he wanted to help. So I wouldn't say that Kyle Rittenhouse is my hero, but I wish that more people were willing to just stand up against the evils of today that are flooding our country, that allowed it to get as bad as it is right now. So much so to the point that people are like concerned that he won't get off because it's such a political show trial. And he should have never even been charged to begin with, because there's ample evidence that it was self-defense. The main DA knew that it was a loser, so he didn't want to try it himself. The prosecution was making the craziest, the absolute most bonkers arguments. And they were even going to try to push the gun charge, knowing good and well that it didn't apply to Kyle. And the judge I was glad he threw that out, but I was like, why do you even have that in the first place? Because once they started kind of going through the rules, they're like, I don't know, maybe he just didn't understand it at first, because he said it seemed complicated to him. And that was another concern, like, how are the average person going to understand it? So anyway, they ended up throwing it out. So he legally had that weapon. So I think the truth is about Kyle is I don't want more people to arm themselves and have to just do vigilante justice, but that's not what Kyle did. That's not what Kyle did. What I want is a society that's just not going to just let themselves be overrun by injustice. That's not going to tolerate all this racial division. That it's not going to tolerate a president that will get up and lie the way that Joe Biden did, talking about he needed to save the soul of the nation. That would tolerate a president slandering a kid, calling him a white supremacist. A media that could just continuously lie time and time again, that could whip people into such a frenzy, that could spin a narrative out of nothing, out of no facts, that would inflame the world to think that police officers are just going around just killing people without any discretion. I want someone to just stand up for the truth and to say we've had enough and we just want to live normal lives and you won't let us. So we're going to fight back, and it doesn't have to be physically, at least at the ballot box in some regard. But if you are in a situation that it is life or death, or maybe you're just concerned about bodily harm, please take care of yourself. The prosecution saying everybody takes a beating sometimes, knowing good and well that Rittenhouse was chased by a child rapist. I'm not gonna a gun is an equalizer. If I'm in a situation and I fear for my life, I'm not. People are arguing that he had the gun, so he should have gotten into a fist fight, and that was unfair for him to have the gun. Even though a mob was chasing him, someone else did have a gun. How do you know what people are armed with? You don't know if someone has a shiv or something to that regard. People are armed with knives all the time. And you know what? Some kind of someone's fighting background is either the fact that they would say that knowing that he was being chased by a child predator is disgusting. So yeah, I would defend myself if I felt harmed, like my life was in danger. And I hope you feel that way too. When people come against the Second Amendment, maybe you think Kyle was a moron. Obviously he was more naive than he should have been. But do I think he did something wrong? I don't think he did anything wrong in a moral sense. Are there different judgments and decisions I would have made? Yeah, I guess. If it was my property though, and if I knew how to shoot, I can't say that I wouldn't be go rooftop Korean. I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say that. If people were trying to burn down my business, my livelihood, I'm not going to say I wouldn't be a rooftop Korean. I'm not Korean though, but I'm sure you guys know the history behind that. So no, I don't really feel like he did something immoral. So I hope the jury comes to the conclusion that he's innocent. And I'm assuming, I don't see any comments for saying that they declared it yet, so I'm assuming it didn't happen yet. And I guess those are all my thoughts. I want to get them out before I guess everything is over, because it could definitely be over anytime soon. I don't know if they're still deliberating or not. But he's clearly innocent. He's clearly innocent. I don't know what all they're talking about, but he's clearly innocent of the charges. And even if they say that he's not, the judge could always do a directed verdict, which I'm not sure that he would. But a mistrial is pretty obvious because of how the prosecution acted, and even different evidence that they submitted wasn't reliable either. So definitely they could get a mistrial if it doesn't go Kyle's way, but it definitely should go Kyle's way, and we will see. So anyway, I want to thank you all for hopping on. A lot of people watching today, but it is a big topic. I want to encourage you all, go blacktnews.com. Please follow me on my different platforms. I'm on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. All my handles are at Black T News. My website is blacktnews.com. The only handle that I have is different is Twitter, and that's at True Black T. If you guys would like to go to the website and look at different merchandise that I have, I got Black Tea mugs. I got You Are Not That Special. That's one of my favorites. My Money, My Business shirts. Because you're a taxpayer, why shouldn't you be concerned about the stuff going on in your life? I mentioned this, the Be Better, Not Better. That's something I think it's a message a lot of people need to know about and embrace today, that there are people who went through real oppression. It's so, when I talk to people who are like in my dad's age range about all the stuff going on, they're like, who really went through things. And of course, their parents and grandparents went through worse things, but they went through something. A lot of people today, they haven't really been through much, but they're so entitled, and they're grasping onto their feelings so tightly because they feel like they've been so wrong. And they feel like kids in, I guess probably younger than me or whatever. I'm 32. People don't realize that I'm 32. They usually think I'm younger, but younger people who go out there and do like those ignorant protesters telling people like, oh, these black men fighting for their lives out here. Those young people, they're so entitled. They're so entitled. So they need to embrace this be better, not better. So I put that on a shirt. I'm not the victim you're looking for. Definitely send that to Kyle. I'm denounce white supremacy, defeat Joe Biden shirt with a list of his racist atrocities on the back, some of them anyway. And I've got the goat hoodie that you guys can check out, and all this stuff on blacktnews.com. And if you enjoyed this episode, if you enjoy what I do, enjoy articles and so on, you can go to blacktnews.com, consider leaving a donation. I like to build this thing as fast as I can, and I appreciate everyone who's willing to share, everyone who's recently liked the page on Facebook and YouTube and other stuff like that. I really appreciate you guys for sharing. And I definitely appreciate anyone who's willing to leave a donation at blacktnews.com/donate. So thank you guys so much. And I stream every day, usually just an hour, Monday through Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern time. And on Saturdays at 7:30, I review TikTok videos. I normally bring on a guest and we laugh at political absurd stuff or just funny stuff in general. Kind of depends who my guest is, what we talk about. But it's normally fun too. So that's what I do here on this show. God bless you guys, and I will see you guys tomorrow.